Listen, just one more thing.
Hello there. Welcome to my review of Season 8, Episode 2 of Columbo, Murder, Smoke and Shadows. First broadcast on the 27th of February 1989 on ABC. Directed by returning director James Frawley and written by Richard Allen Simmons, whose track record for screenwriting is not great, as he was responsible for developing the Mrs. Columbo series that was disavowed by Columbo creators Lincoln Levinson. So it's a little surprising he was asked to write for Columbo a decade later. But then he was a producer on the original series and an executive producer on this series, so I'm sure that had a part to play. The episode begins with a scene from the Universal Studio Tour, which includes the very same Jaws ride we saw in Fade into Murder. The shark still looks fake. The opening credits are yellow-ish again, and as the tour goes on, we begin to focus on a terrified-looking man sitting at the back of the tour bus. This is Leonard Fisher, played by Jeff Perry, a character actor with dozens of credits under his belt, although perhaps best known as Inspector Harvey Leak on Nash Bridges for 122 episodes, reprising that role in the 2021 TV movie. We then cut to Alex Brady, arriving at a soundstage in a golf cart. He is played by Fisher Stevens. Stevens also has a long list of credits to his name, including in the films Hackers, My Science Project and Super Mario Bros., but is best known for playing Ben Jabituya in Short Circuit and its sequel. He's very good in the role and apparently did a lot of research, but it has since become a bit notorious of a part because the character is Indian and Fisher Stevens is very much not. He has since apologised for the insensitivity, and it's remarkable that this was seen as fine as late as 1988, because it just doesn't feel right. But it exists and is a positive portrayal at least. Stevens was most recently seen in a recurring role in the series The Blacklist. Brady is a director, a wunderkind who has had a series of big budget successes at a young age, and as he leaves the building, Leonard sees him and jumps off the tour bus. Brady seems to be partly inspired by young Steven Spielberg, especially with the earlier nod to Jaws, but the similarities end there for reasons that will become obvious. Leonard appears at Brady's editing suite and Brady knows him. They grew up together and Leonard is there to tell him an old friend has died, but keeps mentioning a girl called Jenny who also died, but when they were young. Brady tries to move the conversation on, but Leonard keeps bringing it back to Jenny. Their recently deceased friend has given Leonard a film reel which contains footage of Jenny riding the motorcycle that led to her fatal accident. Where everyone else thought she had had the accident alone, Brady had left her for dead, as it would have hurt his career if it was known she had the accident filming something for him. And Leonard is planning to expose Brady.
I'm glad you got everything you got, because I'm going to turn it all into garbage. You bastard, Alex, I'll ram that picture in every scandal sheet and every newspaper.
There's a lot of set-up exposition in this scene, and it is almost in danger of sounding unnatural and forced as a relatively complicated backstory is revealed. It could have been worse, but I really don't think it would have taken too much to make it a little better. If Leonard had been just a little less meek and led the conversation, telling Brady he has received this footage which shows Brady leaving Jenny after the accident when she was still alive and could have been saved if Brady hadn't been too busy saving his burgeoning career from scandal, rather than the way they dance around the topic for so long. I mean, it's not the most believable setup, with the dead friend holding on to the footage all of these years and doing nothing with it, not even blackmailing Brady after his success, only for the entirely innocent Leonard to present it to Brady, letting him know he was going to expose Brady as a courtesy. It might have made it easier to gloss over the fact the setup doesn't entirely make sense if they had done it with Leonard being a bit more forceful. Brady claims the footage is fake and tells Leonard to wait for him while he gets equipment and experts that can prove it. Of course, he has no intention of doing any such thing and goes to his office instead, where he has a brief discussion with his secretary and with someone who worked with him, before going into his office where Ruth Jernigan is waiting for him. She is played by Bonnie Hagan. Hagan is yet another actor with a full career, including 72 episodes of Herman's Head as Angel, and this is her first of 2 appearances in Columbo. Ruth is in an off-again, on-again relationship with Brady. After a brief flirtatious conversation, she leaves and he phones to have one of the street sets watered down before returning to Leonard. There's quite a lot of light relationship setup here, with Brady being presented as an arrogant, demanding tyrant, both professionally and privately. I don't think it's entirely believable that Leonard would have waited as long as he did, nor is the following scene where Brady torments Leonard as he reveals that the footage is real, before cornering Leonard, then getting him to electrocute himself on a set of gates that Brady set up.
Here we go, Len. Illusion all the way. Into the maelstrom. Into the valley of death rode the 600. It's all fake, Len. Who's the real illusion, Len? You or me? Which one of us is going to die?
So far, the show seems to be going for more outlandish murder methods, but here it fails to set up the method beforehand, so it just seems a bit confusing. These gates are electrified until Brady removes the power cable, but even with that, it would have been better if they had shown him connecting the cable in the first place. I mean, this is Columbo after all. We know he's the murderer long before he does the murder, and it means we know what his intentions are when he takes Leonard to that street, so we are waiting to see how he engineers it. Had they shown him electrifying something that looked like metal bars but wasn't necessarily a gate, they could have done a couple of fake-outs first, building the tension. Brady leaves the studio, and when he returns the next day, there is a familiar car parked in his reserved spot. Inside the editing suite, Columbo is playing with a model train set, reminiscent of the Bye Bye Sky High IQ murder case.
You mean to tell me, Mr. Brandt, that these very intelligent people still like to play with trains?
Some of us do.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a relief to hear. Because I'll tell you the truth, I could play with something like that forever.
We quickly discover that Brady dumped the body at the beach after disfiguring the face quite brutally. Columbo delivers this information while trying out Brady's waterbed, which is a little too silly for my tastes. I imagine they were trying to juxtapose the situation with the information he's delivering, but I don't care for it. Columbo has traced the body back to Brady, as a copy of one of Brady's film books was found near the body, and it has Brady's phone number written on the inside of the book. Columbo has traced the suspect with less information before, but the question here is, if we accept that Brady didn't notice the book fall out of Leonard's pocket as he dumped the body, it still doesn't make sense that Leonard would have a copy of the book or have Brady's number written in it. There are a lot of pieces not quite fitting together. including the insertion of a hologram process that Brady has apparently invented. Luckily, things improve when Columbo uses his just one more thing to very casually bring up the 2 ice cream sundae glasses Brady has failed to clean up after he made them for himself and Leonard.
Well, then I'd have to say that you used all this recently. And the way the cream is hardened along the rim, I'd say maybe this morning, but you wouldn't use ice cream in the morning, so I'd say maybe sometime yesterday. I'd have to say the 2 of you were enjoying 2 black and white ice cream sodas, but not really enjoying them because one is hardly touched and the other one is only half finished.
Giving us a very Holmesian deduction about them, but leaving out that he knows the other man with Brady was the man they found murdered on the beach. Columbo goes to see Brady's secretary and finds out about the street being wet down. This is done really well, as it's set up, delivered, and then seemingly thrown away in a perfectly natural and believable way. It might be my favourite scene of the episode so far.
If you were an inspector, you could help me inspect this desk. I'm looking for a 10-ton water truck.
On his desk, ma'am?
A note or something. They claim you ordered a water truck to wet down the brownstone street last night.
We then cut to Brady speaking with his benefactor, Mr. Morosco, played by Stephen Hill. Hill had a 50-year career in film and television, but is perhaps best known for his role on over 200 episodes of Law & Order as D.A. Adam Schiff. Morosco wants Brady to have his latest film finished 3 months early.
Oh, gee, no chance, Mr. Morosco. I can't do it that fast.
We then see Columbo at the beach inspecting Leonard's car, before we're back with Brady as he continues his attempt to rekindle his relationship with Ruth over ice cream. This date is interrupted by Columbo, who has more questions for Brady after discovering Leonard's belt in his car, which has a secret compartment for money, but containing a traveller's check, which Columbo has been able to use to trace Leonard's name. At this point, Brady has no option but to admit to knowing Leonard, but claims this is just a huge coincidence. He then reveals that Jenny was Leonard's sister. Making me even more annoyed, Leonard wasn't a little more forceful in the first scene with Brady, but also relieved they didn't use that first scene to announce Jenny was his sister, leaving this, again, feeling much more natural a way of delivering that piece of information. Brady leaves Columbo to have a look around as he goes to his car, and is furious with his mistake. The next day, Brady is on set and Columbo arrives, and he's brought Dog with him. A welcome return, although I hate to be the one to say this aloud, but it's not the same dog playing Dog. Let's just say that the previous Dog retired from acting and dwell no further on it. Columbo is there, having looked into Jenny's accident, and tells Brady that it's a good thing he wasn't involved in her death, or he'd have a motive for killing Leonard. Which is, of course, his way of saying, I know you killed Leonard, and I think it's because you were responsible for Jenny's death. This goes over Brady's head. Columbo looks around the set, discovering the murder gates, and the heel of a man's shoe. Columbo then goes to see Brady again on a soundstage, and Brady uses back projection to put Columbo in some scenes before he questions Brady further. Brady then gets very pretentious about filmmaking, and it's a testament to Columbo's self-control that he plays along with it rather than just arresting Brady right there.
A moment ago, you were lost in the shadows. Shadows on a screen. Light and shadow, shadow and light. That's all we have to work with.
After all this, Columbo is back to a topic he knows all about. Shoes. Which he shows to Brady. Leonard's shoes, one of which has a heel missing. He then reveals in his Just One More Thing that he found a heel at the site of the murder, but tells Brady he thinks it's a coincidence. This feels like a fake out for the audience. We are supposed to think he isn't going to tell Brady about the heel, then catch Brady looking for the heel, perhaps planting a fake heel, as in Death Lends a Hand, only to come back and reveal it to Brady. And it's a pretty good fake out too. The question is, if that wasn't what he was doing, why did he reveal the shoes to Brady at all? In the next scene, Brady is with Ruth enjoying a drink and some knitwear by the fire. She talks about how she met her current boyfriend in a series of coincidences, culminating in revealing she knows that Brady set her up with her new boyfriend, as she recognised the actor in Brady's office as being involved in the setup. Brady set up the situation to break it off with her without breaking it off with her, and it's an odd subplot that shows Brady is supposed to be a masterful manipulator, but at the late stage in the story seems a bit of an irrelevancy, as it doesn't really relate to how sloppily he committed the murder. She storms off, passing Columbo as she goes, and he's there with two witnesses who can put Leonard at the film studio. When Columbo leaves, Brady calls the actor he used to set Ruth up for one more job. And the next day, Columbo is enjoying lunch at the studio restaurant and overhears two actresses talk about Leonard and how one of them apparently dated him and how he was apparently in town to score drugs. This is clearly what Brady had set up, as his actor friend is dressed as a security guard who stops Columbo catching up with the two women as they leave. It's not often we see Columbo get caught out like this, but then he goes to see Brady to say goodbye. Later, as Brady tells his secretary she's fired over lunch, she brings up the fact that she remembers Leonard calling Brady and is wondering why they didn't tell Columbo, quickly causing him to change his mind about the firing and offer to pay for a holiday for her. Later still, Mr. Morosco goes to see Brady, and we can clearly see Columbo's car in the background. Morosco is annoyed with Brady's refusal to finish his film early, and he tells him his career is basically over. Enraged, Brady goes to his soundstage, and his technician begins playing the footage of Jenny's accident behind him, before Columbo comes in and tells him he had the original footage blown up, just as Leonard had done. He then provides a string of evidence, including a ticket for the tour Leonard went on, that he had left in Brady's edit suite the day he died, while he was waiting for Brady, and the shoes make a reappearance. Brady says it's all circumstantial, but Columbo says his lunch with his secretary was actually staged, and not only was his secretary helping Columbo, but so were the busboy and the waitress, and the cocktail waitress was Ruth in disguise. Although he does this reveal in a theatrical way, similar to how Brady spoke to him earlier, with Brady imagining him as a ringmaster. I have to be honest, this is not a great episode. It has some really good bits in it, some really interesting ideas, and a few small moments that are very good, but it's a bit all over the place. They were going for a theme of how the movie business is all smoke and mirrors, as the title suggests, but not only is this theme more related to magicians and isn't really followed through on, the gotcha seems to be more related to theatre or circus, especially with Brady's vision of Columbo as a ringmaster, but that's the first time that's brought up. His relationship with Ruth is never fully explained, why he set her up with another man instead of dumping her, or why he dumped her at all. I feel like it would have been much stronger an episode had they either tried to tie some of the unconnected themes together or got rid of them entirely. Had they established more clearly that he was fed up of his secretary, and if there had been a better reason for dumping Ruth, I feel like it would have been so much more strong for it. Another issue I have is that some of the dialogue is very overwritten and unnatural. Stevens is given some of the worst, which is attempting to show him as pretentious, but goes too far and makes him seem like a caricature. It really could have done with a small rewrite. I'm not even sure if how he was eventually caught makes sense, and would have actually preferred it if Columbo had used a missing heel as bait, maybe in a combination with something else. If the reveal of Columbo's deception and gotcha had come as Brady took his secretary for lunch rather than a few scenes later, that might have been something. And the hologram ends up having nothing to do with anything at all. It's entirely pointless. All in all, for the few things I did like about this episode, this is a 2 out of 5 for me. Thank you. Goodbye.